Hi, welcome to the first reading comprehension lesson on the 12th of October 2020. I quickly reminded the class about free rice and that it contributes to the World Food Programme, which won the Nobel Prize on Friday. The lesson objectives are to practice basic comprehension, consider what's important in a piece of text, begin to make deductions and hopefully inferences, and this is all connected to paper 1, section A, question 1. So we talked about reading being teaching learners to think, and we talked about reading strategies, so determining the importance of the text and the purpose, and making inferences and deductions initially. We looked at some vocabulary. So at the beginning of the lesson, we looked for other words for deduce, infer and predict, and we also have reason and conclude, which will be important words moving forward. Deduction, the process of learning something by considering a general set of facts and thinking about how something specific relates to them. Deduction is quite specific and you can be quite confident in your deductions. Inference and deduction help you investigate the world around you, including what you read. Both are skills that can be improved with practice, and both require you to use the information you can see or read alongside existing knowledge. Both require you to read between the lines. Deductions are more specific, inferences are more general. So we have a picture of a girl with a rabbit. She's a person, she's smiling. People smile when they're happy. The deduction is that this person is happy. So inference is a guess that you make or an opinion that you form based on the information that you have. So it's a lot less specific and certain. Inference is less certain. Okay. They were warned to expect heavy air attack and by inference many casualties. So that's a guess. His change of mind was recent and sudden, the inference being that someone persuaded him, also a guess. So here we have the girl with the rabbit again. She's happy, she has a rabbit. People smile when they're happy. Rabbits make people happy. Are we sure about this? We're less sure about the rabbit being cause of the happiness than we are about the fact that she's happy. So that's an inference because we're less sure about it. What's the difference between deduction and inference? Deduction is an understanding based on the evidence in the text. For example, the fire brigade and other emergency services are called out. We deduce that there's been an incident. That would be 95% of what we would expect to be happening if the fire brigade are out. The inference might be an interpretation that goes beyond the literal information. For example, everyone on the street is watching the incident. We infer that the people involved are loved or hated by the neighbours, or that the neighbours are concerned. We need more evidence to make an accurate inference, so it is a guess. We looked at some pictures and talked about what the definite deductions are and what the guesswork inferences might be. Okay, so we looked at some short pieces of text and talked about what the important parts of these texts were, what the main purpose is, what was happening. The Landlady by Roald Dahl. On the other hand, a pub would be more congenial than a boarding house. There would be beer and darts in the evenings and lots of people to talk to, and it would probably be a good bit cheaper too. He'd stayed a couple of nights in a pub once before and he'd liked it. He'd never stayed in any boarding houses, and to be perfectly honest, he was a bit frightened of them. The name itself conjured up images of watery cabbage, rapacious landladies, and the powerful smell of kippers in the living room. And we deduced that this man is deciding whether to stay in a pub or a boarding house. Lamb to the Slaughter by Roald Dahl. Now and again she would glance up at the clock, but without anxiety, merely to please herself with the thought that each minute gone by made it nearer the time when he would come. There was a slow, smiling air about her, and about everything she did. The drop of her head as she bent over her sewing was curiously tranquil. Her skin, for this was her 6th month with child, had acquired a wonderful translucent quality. The mouth was soft, and the eyes, with their new, placid look, seemed larger and darker than before. When the clock said 10 minutes to 5, she began to listen, and a few moments later, punctually as always, she heard the tyres on the gravel outside and the car door slamming, the footsteps passing the window, the key turning in the lock. She laid aside her sewing, stood up, and went forward to kiss him as he came in. We deduced, from that she is waiting for her husband. Sorry, I've accidentally skipped past the passage on the time traveller's wife, where we deduced, you'll see it later, where we deduced that her husband is disappearing and she can't follow him. We're not quite sure why, but we think it's to do with time travel. You'll see that passage later. And then we looked at 1984 by George Orwell. He picked up the children's history book and looked at the portrait of Big Brother which formed its frontispiece. The hypnotic eyes gazed into his own. It was as though some huge force were pressing down upon you, something that penetrated inside your skull, battering against your brain, frightening you out of your beliefs, persuading you almost to deny the evidence of your senses. In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. And we deduce that the hero is living in a society where the government is governing your beliefs and intimidating you into believing what they believe. So paper 1, question 1 is asking you for 4 facts which you need to write out in full from the piece of text that you've been given. For example, what's happening to a particular person in a boat, or what someone is thinking. It's really important that you answer the exact question. If your answers are correct but do not answer the question, you will not get marks. For example, if you talk about what's happening to someone other than the person in question, or talk about what they're doing and not thinking, you won't get the marks. What are 4 things that the protagonist is thinking? These are the 5 things we found. Then we moved on to Lamb to the Slaughter, having just read The Landlady, and we needed 4 things that the protagonist is doing. So we looked at these. 2 of them say sewing, but we are left with 4 things that she's doing. I'll read you The Time Traveller's Wife, as I was unable to read it earlier. Long ago, men went to sea, and women waited for them, standing on the edge of the water, scanning the horizon for the tiny ship. Now I wait for Henry. He vanishes unwillingly, without warning. I wait for him. Each moment that I wait feels like a year, an eternity. Each moment is as slow and transparent as glass. Through each moment I can see infinite moments lined up, waiting. Why has he gone where I cannot follow? So we established that she's waiting for someone who disappears without any warning. From the title of the book, we decided it was probably because he was time travelling. And 4 things that she's thinking are highlighted next. In Big Brother, we were looking for 4 feelings that the portrait of Big Brother causes. So that's where we finished, and on Thursday we will be looking at an exam type paper and answering an actual question 1.